This is going to be a kind of a buying guide for a classic Vitamix 3600 or 4000 model. If you're looking for one of these retro style looking Vitamixes, you like the stainless steel look and you like the vintage kind of technology, this is going to be a helpful video. I've purchased quite a few of these, and I just really like this machine. It's just a very cool kind of kitchen toy, so to speak. And there's a lot of them on eBay that you can find for a good price. But there are certain things to look for in order to get a good deal out of it. The good price range is about anywhere from about $100 to $150. I wouldn't pay anything for more than $150 shipped to your house, because and it has to be in pretty much near perfect condition. It has to be almost brand new. But I would look for anywhere in the average of $110 to $125 for a good one that at least has a tamper unit with it. And I would also try to get a recipe book. There's quite a few of them in that price range that at least have a recipe book, and that's quite useful for these old machines. But around the $100 range for just the motor by itself, like the motor and container, action dome, and all that stuff. Anything more than that, you just don't want to, just forget about it. And if you can get anything less than $100 and it comes as a complete unit and it's a working unit and there's no flaws with it other than whatever cosmetic stuff, you want to jump on it. That's a really good deal. And I got one that came with a lot of good bonus stuff, like recipe stuff and a lot of other little things that I thought were interesting and very informative. Somebody who had it for a number of years, and they saved all the little literatures and advertisements from Vitamix, and I really enjoyed that. But this is about just the machine, and the primary thing you want to be looking at from the get-go on an eBay auction or wherever you're getting from is the container. Okay, the container is probably one of the most difficult things to find separately, because the people will charge a lot of money just for the container by itself, and you don't even know if it's going to be a good container. And so this is the primary thing that I look at. And if you're looking for a spare, keep in mind that there are two different types. There's a 6-point drive and a 12-point drive, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But you would want to have one that includes a container that's in fairly good condition, and I haven't really seen anything online that has any defects in the actual container itself as far as the steel is concerned. I try to find the ones that have the original labels that are complete. This one's on the faded side. This is supposed to be red, but we're just talking about functionality here, and you just want to make sure that it doesn't have a broken handle, and that the screws on the inside are not missing or replaced with some other kind of screw, because if they put the wrong screw in there and it's not stainless steel, it'll rust out and that'll get in your food, and that's not good. Another main thing is for the spigot. A lot of times these original spigot handles, they will break, and you'll have to find a replacement for it, which are online. You can get them for pretty inexpensive. It comes with a whole kit. It comes with the seal and the nut that goes from the inside, and screws on there. They're not expensive. In fact, this machine here has an aftermarket one. Yeah, this one has an aftermarket one here, and it's a little bit different in the in appearance. You'll obviously tell, but it works very well, and it's worth it. It's worth it to get the spigot fixed. Okay, so there, let's talk about the spigot, and we need to talk about another obvious defect sometimes you'll see is the blade assembly. Now the blades, they have to be pretty much 90 degrees perpendicular to themselves. If they have basically like a plus sign, if you don't know what that is, it has to be perfectly straight one way and perfectly straight the other way. If it looks like anything other than this, then the blades are probably worn out, and because these are not one piece, they're multiple pieces connected, assembled together. So if it's, instead of looking like a plus like that, it looks like this, like an X, you don't want it because the blades are worn out and they're no good. Okay, and here's what I also look for. I look for a couple of things with the drive coupling. First of all, you want to make sure that the splines that are inside here are not worn out. It's kind of difficult to tell in photos most of the time, but if they're all like rounded out, then the machine's not really going to work very well. It's got to have some teeth in there. And another thing about these rubber couplings is that they do dry out over time, but this one here is very soft and firm. So this one is definitely has a lot of life left. Another thing that I look for is corrosion around the nut or any kind of stains around the edges here, because what that means is liquids from the container is seeping through it's seeping past the shaft seals, and it's coming out from between the nut and the coupling here, and while the machine is running, it'll spray all the food on the outside, and that's kind of a dead giveaway. Another thing too is that the nut will be all rusty and cruddy and nasty. You want to avoid one of those, because then you have to basically replace or rebuild the blade assembly, and you can't get parts for these. The only way you can get parts for these is to get another container that is in good condition. So that's another thing you need to look for. One thing I like to ask the sellers is to make sure that is to ask about how much play there is in the shaft. And most of these sellers, they're not technical people. They don't really know details about these things. But when I kind of ask them to see if they can wobble this drive coupling back and forth, not up and down. There's going to be a little bit up and down. That's okay. You just don't want any side to side, because if it's too wobbly, that's going to be an indicator that the bearings are worn out and there's going to be leaks and you have to rebuild it. And there you go, you have to get another container. So this is the biggest factor that I look for, this, and that the blades are not crisscross or not perpendicular to themselves. Spigot, you can replace. Handle, you can probably get away with it, but definitely the blade assembly is the biggest thing you need to look at, and it's a make or break deal for used Vitamix. Another thing I look for is the action dome. The action dome, I don't want to have any cracks in it. You don't want to see anything that's I mean, if you might have a little bit of a crack, a small crack or two is okay, but you don't want to have anything that's a very big crack that's going down the side, something that's going to progress into something worse. And you can't get these. You have to, people also sell these separately on eBay for a lot of money. So you want to definitely look for 0 cracks. You also want to have the centerpiece, this funnel piece here. If it doesn't come with a funnel piece, don't get it, because the funnel piece is an intricate part of the action dome. And what it does is it prevents splashing. It prevents liquids from coming out the top when it's running. When it's running, the fluid actually, the liquids get trapped on the outside, and then they get forced down the center by this piece here because of the vortex. And without this piece, all the liquids is just going to come right out the top and make a huge mess. You have to have the centerpiece. It's a very important part of the action dome. And you also want to look at the clamps, make sure they're in good condition. There's no cracks by the pins. If there's like cracks by the pins, then chances are this latch is going to fail on you, and you're going to have to get another action dome or repair it. And most people are not technically proficient enough to do that. Okay, another thing you want to look for, which I say for last because it's not really that big a deal, is the seal. You want to make sure that's in good condition. They'll be cracked and deformed from years of use, but that's not too big of a deal breaker because you can get these. If you look online, there's new gasket seals that you can get from a third-party source, and they're not expensive. But definitely no cracks anywhere in the action dome. If it's stained, you can probably just clean it. It's going to be a job, but I generally just try not to. I look for ones that don't have cracks. If it doesn't have cracks, then I generally jump on it. All right, so that's going to lead me to the motor base. Okay, the motor base in general, I don't really find any that are problematic at all because these motor bases are so good, they're so durable that you really won't find any defects other than cosmetic. The only primary thing that I look for is the drive spline, and make sure that's not worn out. And if you are looking for a replacement motor base for a container, okay, one of these containers, you have to pay attention to whether your container is a 6-point drive or a 12-point drive, like this 4000 here, which has at the time the most updated spline design, and you can see the obvious difference. If you have a container with those 12 splines and you just got a deal on a good motor base just to replace your old motor base for whatever reason, then you can get an adapter that's available on eBay. Again, that's a third party. Vitamix makes 0 parts for these things anymore, and you can just slide that little adapter right on top of this, and then you can use one of these more updated containers. So I kind of like having these 6-point drives because they're a little bit more versatile in that way if you have the adapter. So you can use both the old style couplings and the new style couplings without any issue if you have that adapter. So that's the main thing I look for. The other thing I look for is to make sure it has a rubber pad, because these you can get on eBay sometimes. They're not very often found, but these are very important because it keeps the container in one place. And if you try to use it without the container, it could fall off the machine or make a lot of noise, wear the container out, because you don't want metal contact. You want this rubber piece in there. And that pretty much covers the top. Another thing I look for is to make sure that the switches are in good condition. I try to look for the ones that have original switches. Every now and then you might find one that has a switch that somebody else put in. Just avoid that because chances are it's not going to be a very heavy duty switch. Vitamix used heavy duty industrial switches for these, and it has to have a spring-loaded down position and a permanent up position. Most replacement ones I've seen, if you put it in a down position, it stays there and you have to force it back up, and that can kind of throw you off when you're doing a recipe in the instructions. Another thing to look for is make sure that the rotary dial is in good condition, which generally they are. The only thing that I ever found was that the knob would be missing, because these tend to slide off, and you can get away with putting something else on. And generally I haven't really seen a problem with these other than the knob being missing. The other thing that you'd find that's actually a common problem is these handles. Over time, you know, kitchen mistakes or whatever, they'll break the handle, or even during shipping. Even if you buy it from eBay and the handle's in good condition, it could get mistreated during transport and you can have a broken handle. This is not a deal breaker. This is actually a common problem. This one came with literature, and even in the literature, Vitamix even offered back then a replacement for these handles in the case that they were damaged in shipping. So if they were damaged in shipping, Vitamix would send you one for free, and it was actually pretty cool to read that. But they don't do any more because there's no parts for these. And another reason I look for, I kind of collect these, so I try to get, you know, multiple different build types, and some of them, the really old ones, they won't have this safety breaker. But if you're trying to look for a replacement for your old unit for whatever reason, try to look for one with a circuit breaker in it. This will save it from being overloaded. If you overload the motor, it won't burn it up, so it'll cut out automatically. So that's a good thing to look for if you're trying to get a replacement motor. That pretty much covers it. Other than that, I've never seen motors that didn't work. Most of the time they're just listed as for parts only, and generally it's because they do work. They just don't have a container or something else is missing. One last thing that is very important if you're going to get a used Vitamix, and that is a tamper, because you need the tamper for certain recipes, and you won't find a tamper included with every auction, so you might have an issue with that. But there's a solution. Again, third-party people make tampers, and these are very inexpensive as well. And they typically come with something like a little rubber stopper. Oh, that's a little piece of garlic skin there, and ignore that. They come with a little rubber stopper, and these are pretty handy for any splashback from the Action Dome funnel. So these are actually pretty nice. Vitamix never include anything with that. They actually recommend in their literature to use an apple or an orange for recipes that might have a lot of splashback. The little stopper is a better deal. All right, so back to the tampers. You have to be careful. Like I said, the Action Dome requires the funnel, and especially if you're going to use a tamper, because it's designed to be used with the funnel as a stopping point. If it doesn't have the funnel, it's going to go too far down, and you're going to end up with sawdust in your food. So that's a no-no. That's why you have to. The Action Dome is a very big deal. And the main point I'm trying to drive with the tamper is it has to look like this. It has to look like a cross piece made out of wood, because you'll find a lot of auctions, they'll try to sell you a machine with this type of tamper. This is not the type that is supposed to be used on the classic machine. It's supposed to be used in the more modern machines with the tall container, the tall 64 ounce. This tamper here, when you use it with the Action Dome, gets nowhere near far enough to draw food into the blades, at least not in its completeness. If you're trying to do a peanut butter with your machine, forget about it. It's not going to work. It doesn't even have that much wiggle room to get into every single corner to push the peanuts down to the blades or any nut that you're trying to use. The only thing you could do is use it without the centerpiece, but that's definitely a no-no, because if you're trying to do something that involves a lot of liquid, you're trying to do push ingredients for a smoothie or whatever, without the centerpiece, you're going to get a lot of splashback. There's a lot of area here that's open. You're just going to have a mess. So if they're trying to sell you one with one of these tampers, don't get it. And here's a little comparison. You can see the Vitamix tamper. Right, I have it lined up to the stops. It's just an inch. Actually, it's like an inch and a half away from where it's supposed to be effective. So don't pay extra or jump on an auction just because it comes with a tamper that looks like this. It's not the right one. You want to have either this tamper or at least an aftermarket tamper, or if it doesn't come with a tamper, get an aftermarket one that looks like this. Because even these aftermarket ones, they're a little bit, they're a tiny bit shorter, but not by much. This one's a half-inch shorter, but I've never had a problem with this one. This one works very well. So that's basically the kind of buying guide that I have for it. A couple other things I guess I should touch up on is after you receive the machine from whoever you buy it from, you want to make sure everything works as they said it did. You want to make sure that it comes on when you pull it up, it comes on when you reverse it, and that you want to try that same thing with every single switch position and make sure the speeds change. Now another thing with these switches is some of these have 3 positions and other ones have 4 positions, but there's only 3 speeds. There's low, medium, and high. So if you have it all the way to the left when you're facing the machine, it's going to be low speed, 1 click is medium speed, and the last 2 positions are both high speed. There's no difference in speed change. So there's nothing wrong with your machine, that's just the way it is. And other machines like my commercial 4000 has actually just low, medium, and high. You can't move it to a 4th position, it just has 3 positions. And that's basically the test for the motor. You want to make sure that it doesn't sound slow, which if you never had one of these before, it's kind of hard to tell, but an old Vitamix will really spin very high. In fact, let me just sample that for you just so you have an idea of what it sounds like on each speed. So this is low speed, medium, high speed. As you can see, I was clicking it when it was on high speed. Between the last 2 positions, it was the same speed, never changed. Another thing after you want to check for after you receive your Vitamix through the mail is to make sure that obviously you want to clean it because it's going to be used. And but the primary thing I do is make sure that there's no leakage on the bottom. I mean, you want to trust, but you also want to verify. So what I do is I just fill it up to about halfway or even to the top, whatever you want to do. And I kind of just let the container sit there on a dry surface. Make sure the surface is dry. You put it on there, you fill it up with water, and make sure after about 5 to 10 minutes that there's no liquids coming out of there. There's no evidence of liquid on the counter, and there's no liquids coming out of the sides. And you could even spin it a little bit and make sure that it's completely sealed, because sometimes you'll have it to where you don't really get that much coming out the bottom, or you won't notice it, but once you spin it and get things moving, that's when the liquids will start coming out, the water will start coming out. So that's the other thing you want to check for, and those are the main things. But that's it, that's the buying guide. I know this video is long, but it's just some things that you want to look for in a machine that you want to buy used from eBay. These are fantastic machines. And keep in mind that while these are so versatile, so powerful for their time, they do so many things. I mean, it makes bread, cooks, juices, freezes. But you have to understand that they're also old design. Fantastic, yes, but these newer ones are faster and more efficient at doing their job. So there's some people that say that they don't like the new ones for whatever the case. It's just a personal preference. These newer machines make everything in less time and they come out smoother. It's just the way it is. Just the engineering has evolved over time. And you really can't go wrong. If you can find something that's more modern for a similar price range used, you won't really find them for much less than $150. I think the lowest really was $150 to come with a container and a tamper and all those things. And you want to make sure, I'm not going to make a buying guide on the new ones, but you can probably get them for about $150 if you're lucky. But the going rate is about $170 to $200 for one that's pretty old, but in working condition. But if you want to, if you're really tight on a budget and you want to spend really no more than $125 for a kitchen appliance, or if you really want to be patient and find one for about $100, and you know you're a very frugal type person, your money's tight, a stainless steel Vitamix like this is really an excellent purchase. It's still going to be all those versatile things of the new ones. They're just going to be a little bit more of a learning curve to them, and it'll still change your life. They'll make the whole food juices and everything, all the nutritional stuff that you need to do, all the cooking that you need to do. They will do everything for a very small amount of money, and they will last you for a very long time. And that's going to be my next video. Is going to be maintaining these old style Vitamix machines, because there are actually maintenance procedures to do it, and I never knew that it even existed until I read the literature, the instructions, and I have the versatile Vitamix cookbook for the commercial 4000 back there, and even in that book it doesn't explain any maintenance procedures. It just tells you how the machine works and what the recipes are. But the instructions for this machine explained the maintenance procedures. And they're very simple. It's nothing very complicated. It's just putting a little bit of oil in the motor and the container, and I'll show you how to do that. But okay, that's it. This is a long video. Thanks for watching and paying attention to all the info I have for you on this subject. If you have any questions, just leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer it. And just remember that there are people who really love these machines, and they actually do rebuilds on these containers and things like that. They make the tampers and things and the little stoppers. I mean, there are people who really care about these machines. So and there are parts available. And even if you need parts, you can just buy another one of these. Don't be afraid to buy one even though the parts aren't made for them. Alright, thanks for watching. That's it.